Call the meeting to order for the Economic Growth and Development,
Put us all together when-
Higher Education Planning,
You got it.
Workforce Development. First order of business, can we get a motion to approve the minutes from the prior meeting? Supervisor Hogan, Supervisor McDivitt, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those are accepted. Moving forward, Liza, you're first on the agenda. At least the agenda that's on the board.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
We have a lot of handouts. I didn't know it'd be a packed room, though.
Sorry, I might call in your city, Craig. One tonight, off your personal space. If I stood next to Brad, I'd have to.
Put it down here.
You know, looking at it, I'm like, well, you know, you went chitty-chatty earlier, this would all been done.
Oh, we're gonna.
You want to move the chair?
That looks better, yeah.
Right on the mic.
Good morning. So I'm happy to be here. The first thing that I'm requesting that would love your attention on is the contract that we have with Sealy Office. When I came into position in November, we actually had a copier go out in October, and they had already scheduled to have it replaced in December. And it was replaced in December, but our contract was only up to $1,000, so we haven't been able to pay them for the $1,800 service for installation, training, and so my request is to amend that contract so that we can pay for the $1,800 invoice. Are there questions about that contract?
We need a motion to bring that to the table. Supervisor Bramer, second. McGowan, any questions? Not. Supervisor Leggett?
Yeah, so you're all set now? You have, it's
Yes,
all working?
we're all set, yes.
And so you need $3,000 a year for that one copier?
So we wanted, their invoices also include our copies, any maintenance, so we wanted the request to be for up to $3,000 a year, because we didn't expect this $1,800 repair that needed done, or replacement that needed done. So that would, the $3,000 would include the $1,800 and then any other, expenses that may come up for the remainder of the year.
I just have a clarification
Please do.
question. The rest of the county seems to be using another vendor for their contract. Are you separate and apart so that you're not part of that?
Correct, we're separate. We did look into that, but since we're the only county office in our location downtown, we wouldn't be sharing those expenses with other offices, whereas, for example, up here with that contract, they're able to share those expenses with one business, if that makes sense. Yeah. So we've been with, from my knowledge, we've been with Sealy Office Systems since we're located downtown.
Supervisor McGowan?
Yes, do we lease or do we buy?
It's leased. Thank you for that question. Yes, the copier is leased. It was not purchased. But with the replacement, the installation, the training of the staff, that was the $1,800 invoice.
If I may, please, Mr. Chairman. So this $3,000 a year, not to exceed $3,000, that doesn't include any of the ink or any, that's just scheduled cleaning, maintenance,
Correct.
and whatever might happen to fail inside.
Correct.
And how big is this copier?
It's a good size.
Does it have a sorter bin on the side, and
Has all the bells and whistles.
is it a 7310 TCIS? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? So I think we need to call a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed. Liza, next.
Thank you. So my second request is to delete 2 positions. The first position is a vacant part-time employment and training counselor position. It's been vacant since 2018, but it's still on the books. And my request is to delete that position and replace it with an office specialist position. And the reason and rationale for that is because currently I have my counselors spending up to 10 hours a week helping to cover the front desk area, which is not the best use of their time, especially as we have some new initiatives and partnerships. And then for customer service, when customers come in, they could have up to 7 different people who they receive service from in the front, and I would love to see more consistency there with our State Department of Labor counterparts in our office, in making sure that we have a part-time person from the county who's at the front as well. And so that fits into our budget as well, but that's really what our need is right now. So that's the first position. Are there questions about that?
We need to have 2 separate motions?
They'll all end up on the same resolution. We'll have 2 positions deleted and 2 positions created.
So I think we first need a motion to bring this to the floor. Supervisor McGowan, a second. Supervisor Bramer, any questions, comments? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved.
Thank you. And the second position, I just had a senior employment and training counselor retired this past Friday after over 39 years of service. Really grateful for her service. And I would like to downgrade that position to a coordinator position, which also existed before in the office up to about 2006 or 7. And so this position would coordinate a lot of our partnerships. So the Trade Act, definitely our partnership with social services, our Metrics Online training partnership. That position would do a lot of the coordinating and paperwork, and with our youth employment program as well. So that is really the need for a coordinator position, and since it would be new, it's in a lower grade, it's a downgrade.
We need a motion to bring this to the floor also?
Yes.
Motion to bring to the floor. Supervisor Braber, Supervisor Hogan with a second. Any comments? Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess just a clarification point for paperwork. Do we need resolutions that indicate the positions that are being deleted? I mean, I'm just seeing to create new ones, but shouldn't we have something that states those other positions are definitely being deleted? Not that I don't believe that you'll delete them, but sometimes we have positions that remain, you know.
Oh, we're deleting them. So it'll go on the compensation schedule resolution.
Okay.
We'll say deleting such and such, creating such and such.
So we don't need a resolution for that?
Well, it will all be part of the same resolution.
So it's on the resolution, Rachel. If you look at
So the request
item
to
D,
create a new position is on that one?
Resolution 11, if you
Okay.
look at line D,
Right.
at the end of the very first line, deleted.
Okay, it's just, I didn't know if we had a different resolution form to delete a position versus create a new one. I guess that answer is no. Is that correct?
I don't know whether we do or not. We don't.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Supervisor. Mr.
Thank you,
Dunn.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Just a question on this particular position. You mentioned it's a downgrade or possibly a lower graded position. Is there a net savings to the county in regards to this? And how much that is?
Yes. So, and all of our funds are from the WIOA grant, but the person who just retired was in the salary was in the 50,000s, and this would be, I believe it's on the base salary, which would start about 31 or around there.
31?
Yes. However, I did learn from civil service that they did a vote, I think last Friday, about salaries, and so I haven't received an update on that. But either way, these positions do fit into our budget and actually saves our budget money.
But thank you.
Okay.
Have you decided where to repurpose those funds?
I have not at this time. I'm sure people have many ideas.
Okay.
So do we need a vote on this also?
Yes.
Call the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you. And then, please bear with me. I appreciate your grace and patience as I'm learning process and procedures. This week marks my 3 months since I started here. But I should have included intent to fill also as an agenda item, but you do have it as the attachment. So that's also the request is to fill both of those positions.
Another motion? Let's bring this to the floor. Supervisor Seaver, second by Supervisor McGowan. Any questions? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's carried. Supervisor Leggett, you had a question?
Oh, just, you want to give us a little update on how things are going after these 3 months?
I would love to. Thank you for asking. So as some of you know, we started a partnership with social services. And a month in of their referrals taking our classes, we already have 5 people who have received jobs. So that is 5 people who will likely not be receiving social services benefits because they are now becoming more self-sufficient. So the partnership and the classes are already working only a month in, and 2 sets of groups coming in already in the first month. So that's exciting. We're also working on business services plan where we will be surveying businesses in the next few months, a very brief survey to see what their employment and training needs are. And our online platform, which is called Metrics, online training platform, we are offering it to businesses now so they can upskill or recruit employees using online training classes. And they can use those services for free since we have unlimited licenses. So those are the 2 initiatives we're really excited about right now. Certainly there are other opportunities. I'm also working with SUNY on a number of initiatives to make sure that our work is aligned with meeting the needs of employers, but also job seekers. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Any other questions? With that, thank you, Liza. I do appreciate what you're doing. I did attend a Workforce Development Board meeting with Liza. I think it was towards the end of January. I was really impressed with where they're going, and Liza, I'll put you on the spot. Next month, what I'd like to do is maybe have you talk about your strategy and where you're going forward, spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes just to help educate the committee in terms of what's happening and all the good things you're doing.
Sure, I'd love to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next up is planning.
All right. Good morning. You have before you an agenda packet that Sarah prepared. What we'll do is we want to talk about a resolution for a contract for invasive species, talk about MOA or contract, however the board chooses to go with it, with the regional planning board. And then we'll talk about the 2000 census. So first I'll have Chris talk about the invasive species contract.
All right, so this contract that we're trying to get awarded is in relation to a 2018 grant that was provided for addressing invasive species on Schroon Lake. The grant involves both inspection, decontamination, and also removal of invasives. So we put out an RFP on behalf of the towns of Schroon, Chester, and Horicon to get a firm in here to do invasive removal. We received 2 proposals, and what we're asking for is for the board to award to or consider awarding to Invasive Solutions Dive Company. Their proposal was, in our opinion, the lowest responsive proposer. So moved.
We have a second? Mr. McGowan, thank you. Any questions, discussion?
I think just to point out that Schroon Lake overall is on that management mode of Eurasian milfoil harvesting and such. So this contract reflects that amount of work and style of work that's done.
Supervisor Bramer.
Those were used in the past.
The past few years, it's been the same company, Invasive Solutions Dive Company, that's been working there since 18.
And they're doing a good job?
Yeah.
Right.
I reached out to everyone involved, the towns, all the towns, as well as the 2 lake associations. They've looked at these as well, and I've received word that they want to continue with.
Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. I appreciate reading all of the comprehensive vetting that you guys did. not just to take the low bid, but the lowest bid. There was a lot of information included in there, but most of which I knew nothing about. But it looked like it was important, information that you had really vetted out the information. We were getting the best bang for the buck. Thanks.
Supervisor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to speak on my experience with this company. They've been very professional. Transparency and accountability for the work they're doing on the lake has just been awesome. The communicating between all the associations and the entities involved. It's been a great experience.
Supervisor McGowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just mainly just pulling. Or are they putting mats down and stuff like that?
No, not mats, it's hand harvesting.
Hand
So
harvesting.
Have 1 to 2 divers in the water, bagging up milfoil or curly-leaf pondweed if it's found there. The sites are pretty scattered on Schroon Lake. They've been pretty successful with their program up there, so it's really the best way to go.
So if I may, Chris, is this an eradication program, or is this just a maintenance program?
Well, they're eradicating it, but it's kind of in management mode, I guess. There's not an excessive number of dense beds on Schroon Lake, but there's still a lot of milfoil in the lake. It's just not all in one spot. But it's been decreasing since they started the program back in 2012, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please do.
The thing is I don't think we're ever going to eradicate it, but it'll be kept at a level that we're not facilitating the transportation to other lakes between our decontamination and inspection program, and it's at a management level that has the lowest cost that we can do. I've seen it on Brant Lake though, where it can, if you don't maintain this and keep this program at a level that's keeping that down, it will explode into a much larger problem and stuff cause a lot more issues financially and throughout everywhere else.
Good, thank you. Any other questions or comments? With that, I think we have to call a question, right? So those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Chris. What's next?
Okay, the next
Well,
item is,
thank you.
I'll ask Sarah and Beth to kind of talk about this between them. This is an agreement with the Regional Planning Board for services relative to a grant award they received. Sarah, if you want to talk about what?
Yes, I'm going to just turn it right over to Beth. Here.
So in 2018, our office released a plan called the Lake Champlain Non-Point Source Pollution Sub-Watershed Assessment and Management Plan. Right? I didn't name it. That was Department of State. It was a Department of State grant that we worked on. So in a nutshell, it was a 5-year process. We identified areas within the Lake Champlain watershed, the 5-county Lake Champlain watershed, that had the greatest potential to provide phosphorus inputs into Lake Champlain, and then we ended up identifying 263 projects totaling $187 million in funding needs to reduce phosphorus loading to the various tributaries of Lake Champlain itself. From there, the DEC has been moving towards trying to quantify phosphorus reduction when you put a nutrient reduction when you put a project in, so they've created a calculator, a nutrient reduction calculator. And so we received a grant to take the projects that we identified in our plan and basically run them through the calculator so we can quantify the nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment reductions for the projects that we identified. To be able to do that, there's a lot of GIS that needs to be done, and so we figured it would be a great way to partner with Warren County. Sarah's great at GIS, so we're asking to MOA with the county for Sarah to do that work for us, which she will be paid for, the county will be paid for, throughout the grant up to, I think, $31,200.
So we need a motion to bring this to the floor. Supervisor Leggett and Supervisor Diamond. Sorry, I can't see behind Mr. McGowan.
I'll get a little closer.
Thank you very much. Any discussion? Supervisor
My hat
McGibbon.
on.
You said we need a method to quantify kind of
And so I would think this kind of suggests a results-driven criteria. So at the end of the study, will we be able to look at data and say, okay, this was the problem before, here's where the problem is now, these are the specific results of kind of what has occurred here, or are we dealing in kind of a science that is maybe a more maybe type scenario?
So what we're doing is estimating the potential nutrient reduction should the projects be implemented. And so the DEC created this calculator. You put a various number of parameters in it, one of them being land use, then the percentage of each type of land use. You pick the projects that's to be installed, and they have created coefficients and all this very mathy stuff that I don't do. And so you put it all in there, and at the end of the calculation, should this project be implemented, you'll get X number of pounds of phosphorus reduction per year, nitrogen and sediment reduction.
Okay, then maybe a second question, maybe to back up to Schroon Lake, could what you're suggesting on this program be implemented in the Schroon Lake scenario, the same type methodology in terms of quantifying?
Yeah, it can be done anywhere. The money we have is specifically for Lake Champlain, which Schroon Lake isn't in, which we've had that conversation a lot. So they wouldn't be part of this, but yeah, I mean, the calculator, the other important part of this calculator is once all the calculations are created, we're actually going to put all the results online, because when you go to apply for DEC Water Quality Improvement Program grants, they ask you the very specific question, what is the potential nutrient reduction that this program, or that this project will create? And it's a really confusing question for a lot of municipalities that don't really understand what they're asking for. So for these specific projects, it would actually be attainable online. So if Lake George were to apply for a grant for something, a hydrodynamic separator or something like that, we've already done all the math and the background information. They can just plug those numbers into the grant application and keep it moving.
Thank you.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Beth, for pulling this together. It was a great application. 40 years ago, when I was at UVM in soil science, it was identified that phosphorus from non-point source pollution was one of the biggest factors for what's called pollution of the lake. And it's good to see that, by golly, 40 years later, we're finally getting to measure this stuff here. It's pretty good, but, and with all the best management practices. On your listings here of points, Halfway Creek, are we talking Halfway Brook here is one of the highest scoring for in the sub-watershed, priority sub-watersheds. So.
Yeah, so we utilize the HUC 12, the Hydrologic Unit Code, which the federal government designates as sub-watersheds. There's 79 HUC 12 sub-watersheds in the Lake Champlain watershed. Through our process, we identified 19 of them that have the greatest potential for nutrient input into the lake and its tributaries, and then within those 19 sub-watersheds, Halfway Creek being, a portion of Halfway Creek being one of them. We identified projects within those, so they're all over 4 of the 5 counties.
Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, back to the Halfway Creek. Now, they rebuilt the bridge on Ridge, and they named it Halfway Creek, but then everybody said, hey, whoa, 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 it's been Halfway Brook for as long as I remember. So is it a creek or a brook?
They call it Halfway Brook in Warren County. I'm from Warren County, so calling it Halfway Creek pains me. But the federal government called it Halfway Creek.
All right, so that's where they came up with the sign thing when they made up the sign. I mean, I just remember when it came up and everybody's like, geez, when did it change?
Everyone in Washington County calls it Halfway Creek. Everyone in Warren County calls it Halfway Brook. It's federally designated Halfway Creek, so that's why we went with Creek.
And if it was in Johnsburg, it would be Halfway Creek.
Any other questions, comments? So call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
All right.
Moving on, Wayne.
Yeah, the next thing I'd ask Sarah to kind of give an update of where we are with the 2020 census. That's been a nightmare from the state as far as they're getting their act together, but Sarah?
So I think Brian gave everybody a great update at the
board meeting on Friday, so I'm not going to spend too much time, but I did want to demo our new website. I'll send out an email later today to all the supervisors and give you the URL for the website and the Facebook and Instagram pages. But here is our new Warren County Count website. So it just has some basic facts, a nice little video from the Census Bureau, how the census works, where to go if you want to find out more. We decided to include some historic county, Warren County census facts, which was kind of fun. So the first census was actually held in Warren County in 1820. The first census was in 1790, but Warren County was not actually a county yet. We were part of Washington County until 1820. And some historic population figures here through the various years of the census. So I think our 2010 is going to be the first one that's going down instead of up, unfortunately, but hopefully we can make that as minimal as possible. We also have just some general questions, and we tried to make these specific to our constituents here. So there's just general ones about a link to the forms, the census question form, some security concerns. We added some things about what to do if you're a seasonal resident. There's some questions about, the Census Bureau typically says to answer the census where you are on April 1st. However, there are more specific guidelines is that you should answer as your usual resident. So we definitely want to get the word out about this, because we have people who are in Florida or, Georgia or South Carolina or whatever for a few months in the spring. Oftentimes they're there on April 1st. We want to definitely emphasize the fact that they need to fill the census out reflecting that they're living in Warren County. Again, we know there's security concerns, so we have a lot about that, how to identify if somebody's really working for the census. And then we included where to go for help. So I put this little map together where you can enter your address, and it'll tell you the closest place to go to get help and the hours. So in this case, the closest spot to me is Crandall Library, but this will work throughout the county, and we'll continue to add locations to here. We have a number of nonprofits who are going to open their offices for people to come in and get help. Right now we have all the libraries included. And then we have a calendar for census events. So our Complete Count Committee will be doing a presentation, the Quality Senior Care Coalition. I think as Ryan mentioned at the meeting on Friday, Chris and I are available to give presentations at any meetings. So if anybody has any meetings coming up, we'd be happy to come talk for 5 minutes about the importance of the census and give people a quick overview. So this will be live today. And again, I'll send out the URL. We also have, I don't know, blocks. When is this in April? When is it actually? So the first mailing will be arriving March 12th. The census officially opens March 12th. Census Day is officially April 1st. That's like the sort of national, this is Census Day. We're planning to do an event here at the Municipal Center to kind of just get the word out, encourage people. But it officially opens March 12th, and you should be receiving a letter from the Census Bureau in the mail that week of March 12th. So we have a Warren County Census Facebook page. So our office will be doing posts to this every single day from here through the end of the census, probably June time frame. The Sidekick Creative will be doing one post a week, and they will be boosting that post. So the posts that they make, which will be once or twice a week, depending on how close we are to April 1st, they will show up in every single person in Warren County who's on Facebook. So it will be basically an ad on Facebook specific to Warren County. And then we have the same for Instagram too. So Facebook is more widely used, so we're going to use the majority of our advertising budget on Facebook, but we will also be posting to Instagram, and we will do some advertising on Instagram, which tends to be a younger constituency, I guess, of users on Instagram. So we'll do both. And we are in the beginning phases of putting some videos together, so we're going to be working with Glens Falls Middle School. We'll be doing that in the next couple of weeks to do videos. They'll be posted here on Instagram and Facebook and on the website. And yeah, we have lots of other things in the works. We're just kind of on hold, waiting for the state to hopefully stick to their timeline, which I don't have a lot of confidence in happening, but we'll see.
March
Hopefully
10th.
that will happen. March 10th is the date that we're supposed to get an award letter. So fingers crossed that that happens.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions? Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you. Sarah, I think that looks phenomenal. How often will people be replying back to those comments on Facebook? Like you said, Sidekick did the design and whatnot, and they'll be putting up a post and then we pay
we'll
to
be
do that.
monitoring it. So Amanda, Chris, and myself will be monitoring Instagram and Facebook daily, so we'll respond to stuff, within a day, if not less.
Yeah, you know that younger crowd? Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
So I'd love, again, I'll send out the URL. If you guys can link to this from your town website, that would be fantastic. If you can follow on Facebook, Instagram, promote it to your constituents, that would be wonderful. I'm going to work with IT so that we have a link from the front of the Warren County website, so that it's right there, front and center.
Great. So moving on to housing.
All right, Pat's here and Ed to talk about the housing study and where we are with that. So Pat, if you want to.
Yes, at last month's meeting, we briefly talked about the scope of work that would be included for the housing study. This dates back to the meeting that was held last March by EDC at the library. A number of supervisors came. Everybody addressed their issues in terms of the need for new housing, affordable rental housing, etc. And so many of the members have already received this either via this committee or the LDC committee. So I just wanted to say that we are ready to move forward with the various components, and there are some that can be on parallel tracks. One of the things we'd like to do, and I spoke with the director this morning about this, is that we would like to have the the LDC basically be the entity that puts the RFP out, that basically has a contract with the market analyst, and we utilize the funds from EDC. I believe they're on board to provide us additional funds for that. And we would have a memorandum of agreement that the planning department would be a facilitator and work with the two other entities to make sure that this work is done. And we would like to have this done by this fall. I can tell you that a similar study was done, was just completed in the town of North Elba. They did a needs analysis. They really didn't do a market analysis. But I know that Tupper Lake and parts of Franklin County, I know the consultant who's working in that particular project up there, and they're doing a market analysis as well for that particular portion of the farm. So there's a as you might expect, there's a huge interest in the housing, the need for housing, what's happening with housing, you know, who's coming, who's going. There's a lot of questions out there, and certainly we would hope that that with the information that comes forward from the census, that will supplement the information that was that we are going to collect from the communities. I would also say that I'm very grateful to Regan Development. Regan Development is doing the project you may be familiar with as Broad Street Commons in Glens Falls. Regan Development has provided us the market study that's now about a year or so old for our use here at the county for both the city of Glens Falls, and it covers a large part of the town of Queensbury and some of the county communities. So that gives us a really good start on providing good information to complete our own market analysis. So that's all I really have to update the committee on. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Supervisor Leggett.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Pat, the relationship of housing and LDC, can you give us a background on that?
Today, or, you know?
3 minutes or less, yeah.
Yes. Matter of fact, I can very simply. The planning department has been involved in the housing business for like 30 years. And we utilized the LDC when it was created back in the mid-'80s to be the repository for the repayment of any funds that would come back, you know, from our new homeownership program or our housing rehab program for those people who, you know, sold their home, and it created an amount of money that we used for a variety of things, for folks who had, you know, emergency housing needs and a few other things. So we find ourselves with having a little bit of money there, and when the transition occurred from the planning department utilizing those funds to the Warren County LDC being the repository of it, and with the with EDC being the manager of those particular programs, housing, microfinance, etc. You know, they're kind of the stewards of that money. So so now here we are, desiring to use the money for our market study. And so we have the funds that we have collected over a period of years, managed by the EDC, and the EDC has been also helpful in that they're providing us monies to do the study. So kind of give you a, you know, around the bush kind of a discussion about that, but that's kind of how we went from the 80s and the programs that the county had to present time. So I'm sure Ed can provide any additional information about that, but that's kind of how that worked.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Pat, I do, and I'm just trying to get my arms around this role and everything that happens here. But we do a study, a market analysis, and we get some results that says this is our needs. How do we translate that into action, and what do we have to measure the results of, we did this market study, this is our needs were, oh, by the way, 2 years from now, we've just satisfied 10% of those needs or 50% of those needs. How do we go back and forth and do that connection?
You know, that's a great question, because when I was preparing for this, I thought, what is our focus here? What is the most important thing we're going to do? And I think if we go back to the meeting that we had last March with the supervisors, meeting at the library, saying, you know, we believe we have this need. We have developers or contractors in the community that might want to respond to that need. You know, what's the best way to bring them forward, bring their ideas forward? What can we do? And I think this is really about trying to make a study most current as we can, identifying what our needs are, and getting that information out to the communities and to prospective either contractors, developers who may want to participate in that program. So our measure is going to be how many people we could, on the front end, how many people, businesses that are interested in developing housing, how many of those can we get this information out to, how can we respond to their questions, and then ultimately, are those who are serious, can we facilitate their movement into the programs offered by DHCR? So I think the measures will come by how many we could, on the front end, get to respond to the housing needs and help them through the process. And then I guess the end result will be, well, how many units did we create, you know, 5, 6, 7 years from now? But that's pretty much how I'm thinking how we're going to proceed with this.
If I can just add to that. At the meeting at the library, the representative from the Division of Housing Community Renewal indicated that if the county initiated the study and had it prepared, that the division, DHCR, would then contact those developers that know their whole process and kind of have already been vetted with them, and provide that information to them, help facilitate, you know, getting something working here in the county with those pre-selected and vetted housing developers.
So, just a follow-on question, timing for something like that. So the study's completed this year. When would we expect to have some measures to say, we've made something happen?
As was indicated before in some public meetings, the state had 10 years to get ready for the 2020 census, you know, and here we are at the last minute. So this is not a quick process to get it through the state, but more than likely, you would look at a 2-year gestation period at the grantor agency to get a consultant on board, to get a funding package put together if there is a developer that is interested in taking this information, and they have to do a more in-depth analysis of what we would provide. We're just kind of whetting the appetite with this, and then they would have to look at their specific economic package of how, you know, if they put X amount of state fund, X amount of private, they use tax incentive, tax credits, what can they make it on the market rate of what rents are going for or new units are being sold for. So basically what you're doing is you're doing some legwork to give to the state agency to let them kind of recruit into their process some of the consultants that they know have delivered in the past and elsewhere and have a comfort level with. And so that process to get through the state is a 2-year process probably.
I just want to say that the programs that the state runs are directed at households. Creation of new units are based on units that are for folks who are 80% of the area median income. That's not to say, though, that when we finish this study that it'll show what the demand is, and we may be able to address issues for folks who are at median income or 100% of median income. So there is that bump over that for those units that are needed for market rate housing. So I think we'll get our dollar value out of this by virtue of the whole range of housing needs that will be addressed by the study. So.
Well, housing does equate to workforce, and workforce is a big part of our economy and the growth of our economy, so it's important things. Ed, Mr. Bartholomew.
Add to Patricia and Wayne on this is that the state of New York has identified the upstate region as a key area for combining exactly what you just said, Mr. Chair, in terms of affordable housing translates into potential of bringing those people back into the economy and as a job. The state of New York has developed kind of 2 preferred lists of qualified. One is the consultants that would undertake and assist in doing this RFP. Secondly, they have developed a selected list of preferred developers that are experienced in this upstate area, which is different. This is unlike New York City or Westchester, Yonkers, where putting up 500-600 units is a common occurrence, or even units up to 1,500 in Brooklyn as an example. Up here, most likely there would have to be kind of satellite locations for a number of units, perhaps in North Creek, perhaps something up in Chester, Warrensburg area, because that's where the individuals are residing. Secondly, the lack of affordable transportation at times lends itself to these kind of satellite locations, so that the list of developers is going to be the key of qualified that are interested in looking at 3 to 4 multiple locations in the North Country as well. Also, the fact that many areas have to be analyzed from an infrastructure. Is there sufficient water? Is there sufficient sewer or septic in those particular areas as well? But I think that the time frame Wayne has put together is very realistic. the interest by the North Country supervisors in John Stroud and Queensbury is high. We were very fortunate through the State of New York and the Housing HCR to identify Larry Regan as a potential developer, and he's come in and done his units, the 72 units, will be open late spring of this year. They started construction in the fall of 2019, so it's about a 6-month construction, and they will be open. And there is, under the new tax credit law that was adopted federally, there is a blended rate, whereas it allows, like an interest rate that goes up and down, besides 80%, that can drop down and allow a few units to be less than 80% within that particular unit. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity for Warren County and this committee and board to move forward strongly in looking at affordable housing.
Good, thank you. There's no motion on the table or no reason to vote. This is just an update. Okay, thanks. So any other questions regarding housing? So moving on to the agenda, Ed, how much time do you need, Ed? We have 30 minutes by that clock, but I'd like to say a few things too. So what do you have in terms of timing? Or
Why don't you go first then?
Wait a minute.
no, it's all right. I want to hear what you have to say first, if you don't
Was
mind.
there an annual report from planning? Was that to be picked up today? The 2019?
Annual report was handed out at the last meeting.
Yep.
And we will discuss it next month.
Okay.
It was on our agenda, but due to time constraints,
Okay.
was pushed back. We encourage everybody to read it, you know.
This beautiful report.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Sure. Yeah. Sarah was the primary author on that. You can blame her for any issues with the county.
Contractor for ours.
Sure. Yeah.
Sorry, Brad, I keep playing.
Supervisor Dickinson, if you'd like to join us, I believe you are on this committee also.
That's me, I'm fidgeting.
Thank you. Good morning, Dennis.
Dennis.
Okay, we're ready. I need about 25 minutes.
Thank you, Ed.
No.
You're fine.
I did.
What you can say in 25 minutes, you can say in 15 or 10. Number one, we are conducting tomorrow morning a economic outlook for the coming year. We have 2 speakers. One is Heather Brachetti, who is the president of the New York State Business Council, that will be addressing a number of issues facing the business community, as well as the legislative agenda from the Business Council perspective coming up for this legislative session, which is just underway now. And secondly, we're also fortunate to have the president and CEO of AngioDynamics that will be speaking to talk about the acquisitions. They have made several firms that they have acquired in the research and development area, and also as well as their advancements with the nano knife, non-heat that will be in trial right now with the treatment of pancreatic cancer, which is a very important key area. They had you can't call them trials because it's over in Europe and they have different processes than the FDA here, but it was very successful. Angio is quietly confident moving ahead with the trials here. One of the difficulties has been that one aspect of treatment of pancreatic cancer has been heat, and heat does not necessarily do well in the treatment of pancreatic cancer, and so this nano knife would be a non-thermal type of piece of instrument that would be utilized in this treatment. So it's very interesting, and if that is successful, that nano knife would be manufactured here at the Queensbury site. So Mr. Clemmer is going to be going into more details on that, relative also to the third company that has now come into the market, Medline, which acquired the Phil Morris NAMIC catheter section of AngioDynamics that is located on the technical park, off Technical Park extension just off Dix Avenue. So I think that will be an interesting and informative outlook going forward from manufacturing, of course, the medical device industries of Benton Dickinson, formerly CR Bard, Angiodynamics, and Medline now represent a cluster of over 3,000 employees in our region that reside throughout Saratoga, Warren, and Washington County in the area. That's just a little bit more information in that particular area. One of the issues that has cropped up in terms of the issues with the broadband in areas, and I have to say that SLIC has, in my opinion, been very aggressive as well as receptive to the communities in the North Country in trying to work to see where they have gone beyond what their expectations were in certain areas to assist in some of our neighboring towns. One of the difficulties is that the Department of Transportation, when they adopted the budget last year, included a fee for all fiber optic companies that were working in any state right-of-ways that had not been recipient of a New York State grant. So if you're not a New York State grant, as an example, outside of Watertown, the IDA in the Watertown area undertook a project to assist two businesses that were a mile away from any fiber optics, which was critical for their operation. Because it was not part of a state grant, this was going to be funded by the IDA, and it was along a state route. They ended up having to pay probably $2,000 to $2,500 additionally or more for the connection to that industry. So this is an area that we need to be looking at in terms of trying to assist the providers that are going beyond the New York State broadband grant. So that they do not get imposed, and it's only imposed on the fiber optic companies. It's not imposed on other phone companies. It's just for fiber optics.
Supervisor
Thank you. And it's just along New York State. This is a New York State DOT
Yes.
rule. Is that correct?
No, it was adopted and approved by the legislature in the budget for this. So. You would look at it initially and say, well, you know, those dollars, but when you have other agencies like an IDA or other organizations or a private sector asking for extension of broadband in an area that was not included within the state plan and not part of the broadband grant, that's an added expense when broadband, as we know, in cell coverage in the North Country is a necessity. It's not a luxury.
But if they're coming down county road or town road, there's not that fee.
You're okay. And in some areas, you're going to be fine with doing that. But again, that's just another one of those hidden fees that goes out to the providers as well. So I just, raised that issue. John, is there anything else to add?
Well, it's like an octax payment. It's not a one-shot deal. So it's ongoing. So
it's an annual fee.
It's an annual fee.
Yeah, so it definitely makes it economically unfeasible for some projects right away from the provider side,
How many individuals are we talking about here? Are these businesses or these individual families that are?
They could be both. It's an assessment. You cannot pass that on. The provider cannot pass that on to the occupant, whether it's a business or whether it is a residential. It has to be absorbed by the fiber optic company.
Supervisor Hogan.
Can I interject quickly?
Yes, sure.
So one side effect that we're running into is we have places where Frontier is already servicing. The home or the business is turning over. Frontier is not their grant award, and they will not provide internet service to this home or business at this point in time. The other SLIC is still rolling out. They're not there yet. So I have people who've bought homes hoping to run them Airbnb. I've got a small business. They're in these areas where they can't even get internet. Nothing. For the time being. Eventually SLIC will get to them. But for now, nothing.
So if this was in the budget, help me understand, does this need to be approved in this new budget?
No.
It's just going to continue on?
It's continue on.
So do we have any lobbying efforts
I
to
think
get
that
this out?
we have talked to Empire State Development Corp. In terms of, there are the association, a couple of different associations that are petitioning to see if this could be repealed. It will be repealed. This is a sunset of 2024, so it's ongoing for a period through 2024 before it's executed. And I did list a copy of the legislation and the section of the budget, which is in the Department of Transportation budget section 70 that was adopted last year. Again, there's so many things that happen in a budget. It's very difficult to pour over every single section of budgets respectively by the legislative staffs and so forth. And again, sometimes there are discussions and agreements back and forth of what goes and what doesn't go in particular budgets.
So thank you, Ed. But just to interrupt, I just asked Administrator Moore whether it'd be worthwhile for the county to write a letter or have a motion to say it's important that this get rescinded or repealed in this year's budget. He thought that it might be a good idea. I'm just curious what the committee feels. So, if so, would someone like to have a motion? Supervisor Bramer.
Sure. We send some sort of advocacy letter to repeal this earlier than 2024. This fee, yeah.
Okay. Supervisor Hogan. And I impose on you to help word this appropriately so we don't upset too many people?
Well, would this be a resolution, a letter from the chairman of the board? What's the committee's pleasure?
Which one is going to have more effect? One of each?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, any thoughts?
Sure.
So one of each. So there's a motion and a second. Call the question?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Sorry, Ed.
No, that's fine. I thank
Kevin, I'm sorry. Supervisor Garrity, question?
While you're writing that letter, why don't you write a letter to the APA and tell them to get their head out of there? Or let them put the towers up higher where they need to be. That's off another reason why we're not getting broadband in certain areas. I think if you're gonna write letters, I'd write one to that agency too, because they're still not very receptive about doing anything over 40 feet.
If we can bring that up next month?
We'll bring it to legislative rules. I don't.
Okay.
We in the non-urban areas suffer.
I've heard that in my listening tours. Thank you. Ed?
Well, you can't get your cell phone if you're up on the listening tour in North Country. I mean,
I did actually, and I was in North
you
Creek,
can in
and
certain areas.
my phone was all lit up, and I was saddened by that. People could contact me.
It's a very difficult issue because every day we get calls from some businesses that have utilizing their iPhone now to take credit cards and so forth, and they're unable to complete the transaction because of the spotty cell coverage at times. So I know, and Kevin, the entire North Country boards have been supportive of trying to get this there. And just another issue as an aside, it took 6 to 8 months for SLIC to get the approval from the Public Service Commission, who had to get approval from National Grid, because every pole that they utilized to place their equipment on had to be photographed. There had to be a survey around that location of the pole, and then determine the strength or weakness of that pole, and then send that to National Grid, who then would say, we disagree that the pole should be removed and replaced, therefore causing a delay back and forth between a company like SLIC and National Grid before it went to the Public Service Commission. That again took part of the delay as to why they're not down into the town of Johnsburg, as an example, as they're coming down from the town of Minerva, because of those issues here. All the calls and frustration from the constituent comes down to this board here. And therefore, I think that to echo just what Kevin is saying, is that there's a good effort by the state, but they just need to accelerate and removed some of this road blockage that many, many years ago, the other administrations had a unit that cleared up some of these red tape and some of these rules that prohibited development in a more expedited area.
I'm all open to discussions about breaking down those barriers and making this happen faster. So I think that should be one of the things on my agenda for this next coming weeks, to talk about how we can do that quickly.
Okay, we move from broadband just on rail. This is not a discussion by any means of walking trails, snowmobile trails, replacement of rails. So I want to get that at the outset. I defer to the body here to discuss that issue in more detail. This is just to show that within our area, and you see discussions going on, and it's very infrequent, but occasionally a business, for instance, the business that is being discussed by the Warren Washington IDA now for rail, and they happen to be located where rail is, and so there's a potential of a plastics company of coming into that particular area, which is just off the Washington County. The only, the rail locally in our particular area, as you can see, comes in from Fort Edward on what they call the Glens Falls line that goes all the way to Finch Paper. It's very rarely used, except Finch Paper uses that on a regular basis. The Post Star used to utilize that in some other industries. And at one time, the rail went all the way across Route 9 on into Pines Island. So one of the areas that we are looking at is potentially in some area where there is some access in Warren County that may be conducive to some type of siting. We are getting a number of requests in that are looking for some warehousing and some jobs. Now we know warehousing is not as job intensive as we would like. However, the warehousing is becoming, and my next slide will show you, a major component that is logistically a feeder for other types of development of further trucks into the area that would permit the delivery of supplies in a quicker and more expedited fashion to many of our businesses located into this particular area. So that is something that we are taking a look at to see. It is rather expensive. There are some state grants available. Point that out. This is something that has recently cropped up that we want to just take a quick look at as an example. So, working with the Center for Economic Growth, we developed an analysis of transportation and warehouse shipping. And this is where the data, the last data that we were able to glean of this is 2017, so it takes 2 to 3 years sometimes for this data, is over $4 billion is associated of the movement of transportation by truck, rail, and warehousing within the capital region to other areas. So you reduce, obviously, from the top of that, the gasoline and fuel, and look at the particular other areas. But basically, fulfillment centers, similar what you go on the Amazon or wherever, and you see that you're not getting the product directly from Amazon, but you're getting it from a fulfillment center that's associated with another vendor that has an agreement with Amazon, is looking at the major areas throughout the Northeast area of USA. So what we wanted to do just is to highlight and take a look at what is being delivered throughout our particular region in the opportunity. And it also goes into the fact that related to this is that there is an aging, I think Mr. Leggett had asked for some of the data of aging within certain demographics. We know that in the nursing area, there is the average age of the nurse is plus 45. And that's a major area where efforts are being made by colleges and hospitals throughout the areas for recruitment. They're recruiting overseas, they're recruiting in Africa, South America for nurses. Another area, as we know, with our friends in Washington County are experiencing that, that's in the area of agriculture. and farming. The average age of farming is higher than the age of 45. And also another area is in the area of truckers. In terms of drivers, is an aging population in the area as well. And despite all of the efforts, you hear it on the radio, TV all the time, of offering bonuses, of signing, offering to say that you'll be home 5 days a week and don't have to travel more than 200 miles round trip in a day, that is, creating a shortage in our particular area. The number of smaller independent trucking companies have gone to the wayside of large, trucking companies that are coming into the area as well. So we add that to the list that we need to be looking at to see how we can adopt and be looking to work with the Workforce Development Committee as well as with our speaker here this morning, Liza, in terms of analyzing how we can help in some of these particular areas and intensify our efforts in this area. And again, that gets back in child care, which Dr. Duffy is leading a consortium meeting coming up in early March, as long as workforce housing. Those things are very important, that component together for additional jobs in our area. The idea of reaching out and bringing new people into the region is an admirable goal, and I think that we should continue to proceed that through Supervisor Beatty's committee. However, we need to look at what we can do instantaneously as well as permanently of bringing back into the workforce man or female that is working at home as mom or Mr. Mom, to get them back into the workforce, as well as looking at that area of affordable housing in our area. So that's my report this morning.
Thank you, Ed. I appreciate that. Any questions? Additional questions for Ed? Thank you, Ed. I know that maybe the committee doesn't know this, but Ed and your organization has actually embarked on a consultancy to look at the strategy for the EDC. I did happen to have an opportunity to speak with the consultants from Camoin, and I understand some of the other supervisors have done the same, and I look forward to hearing more about the results and what they come up with in terms of the strategy. In terms of my agenda, and I know I don't have it written down, but I have 7 minutes, and I think I'm doing pretty well, considering. But one of the things we talked about the last time this committee got together was the Association of Mental Health, the Elizabeth Miller property in Glens Falls. From what I understand, there's not been any significant action related to the Article 78. I am still concerned that we're going to be losing taxable revenue for the city of Glens Falls by losing industrial property, but at the same time, I recognize that there's also a significant need for mental health housing and the like. So it's a bit of a quandary. Hopefully we can work that out, but there's not been any change in update from my understanding. Supervisor Diamond, if I can put you on the spot, one of the things I did ask about was the percentage of land in Glens Falls that's industrial related.
In trying to answer your question, I believe that's the last light manufacturing undeveloped piece of property that I can identify in the city of Glens Falls.
Okay. And I'm not sure what's available in Queensbury, but the industrial land is something that provides us not only a tax base, but gives us an opportunity for some higher paying jobs if we can make that happen. So it's one of the things that I think about.
Chair, Tech Metals was annexed into the city of Glens Falls. That is available for light manufacturing.
Good.
Similarly, Miller Mechanical. Queensbury Business Park, which is owned partially still by the county under our option, as well as owned by EDC. That is available. There's still some land, probably more land available in the Warren Washington, IDA, and also there is land available on Finch, on Pines Island, for some industrial development. But Mayor Diamond is correct in saying that there is limited supply in the city. The city is only 3.5 to 4 square miles. The bulk of the units in the Glens Falls are residential. You have major industries that remain in Glens Falls, like Finch Paper is the single largest taxpayer in the city of Glens Falls with paying jobs. And adjoining almost Finch Paper, of course, is Glens Falls Hospital with major employment, yet they are on the not-for-profit rolls as well. So you have to there balance the issue of the creation of jobs and employment in that area versus that not-for-profit area. Hudson Headwater is located in the city. They're looking to expand. That will be, again, a not-for-profit, but they are bringing in some additional jobs. So it's a quandary for the city in the balancing act of all of these. But I know that Mayor Diamond and city supervisors express very much interest in retaining Elizabeth Miller in the city of Glens Falls. And we are hopeful that we're able to accomplish that at the end of the day.
I think it's a good goal. Supervisor.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to touch bases a little bit more on that. One challenge that we're faced with, along with Warren County Economic Development Group and Ed Bartholomew, is that Elizabeth Miller's business has grown to a point where she's outgrown her footprint there. She has a site in Washington County. She's looking at a couple other sites. She'd really prefer to have all of her business plan located within a very close proximity, such as where she is now. So that's the biggest challenge we're facing, is how do we help her, because her business is growing. She wants to increase her employment status, but she wants to be on one local site specifically, and that would be Glens Falls. So that's one of the biggest challenges we're faced with. It's a good challenge. Business is strong, but we've just got to find a way to try to make that work locally in Glens Falls.
Eastfield.
Actually, that was my purpose for bringing it up, is just trying to find a way to make it work. I think it's important to make it work and see where we can go from there. Yes?
I just want to ask Ed about the former Price Chopper property in the corner of Dix and Cooper.
I'm not able to discuss that issue this morning, Patricia.
Okay.
Sorry.
I was just thinking about that in terms of more
I'm not able to
idea.
get into that.
That's okay.
I'm under a non-disclosure agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else related to Supervisor Bramer?
I mean, I will chime in for what I know, which is not much. The Price Chopper building is sitting there vacant, and as far as I can tell, they're asking a lot of money for it. But I don't know what we can do to help Miller Mechanical be able to stay where she is. That would be great to keep those jobs in Glens Falls, help her expand here rather than go somewhere else.
I don't think there's any disagreement by the city administration, by Mayor Hall, by the city supervisors, including former Mayor Jack. But sometimes things take a little bit longer, and it has twists and turns, and I think that's all I can say at this particular point.
I'd like to add to that, though, if that site was to be considered, there are some changes that would have to occur. Number one, you have the bike trail that runs through that particular area that would have to be addressed. Number two, the zoning would have to be addressed in the city of Glens Falls in order to make that work.
Thank you. My purpose was just to bring visibility, keep the visibility up. If there's opportunities and there's consequences, and we just need to figure out how to make it all work. Anyone else with any comments?
I would like to echo something that Supervisor Garrity brought up. I live in the town of Bolton. I had 3.5 days recently with no cell service, no phone, no power. Cell phones don't work, so if you need emergency services, there's no towers. And I think Supervisor Garrity was bringing up that, there's a need to look at the height. There's a need to look at where they're, co-locations. But there's a number of us who live out, not in an urban area or in a hamlet, that spent 3.5 days without access to anything. And for those in the city and the down county area, that may not be an issue, but because of the towers, but it's very real.
I've heard it continuously for up north. Supervisor Garrity.
One last comment. After the storms, I sent both our legislative leaders, and I'll be other than the governor, because he never responds to me. I sent them both an email saying, I'm not a scientist, but the sun is our friend. We ought to start cutting back the power lines, we ought to start cutting back the roads, allow the sun to work, we would use less salt, people wouldn't run out of power the way they do for many, many days in the North Country if we would just be smart about it and start doing things the correct way. I got a response from some of them, I haven't heard from the senator yet, but I'm not alone. There's a lot of people getting frustrated with what's going on here, and I share your pain, you know. The other thing is, you know, there are a lot of volunteers out there, endless hours, and getting nothing to man the fire stations and go out and check on people, and I think that's all lost on the politicians in Albany.
Any other questions, comments? I know, just Supervisor Sieber.
I just wanted to tell you that report that you had sent out to us this morning as it related to, what's that, the EMSI
There's a number of different data points in that email that I sent out, but just for everyone's reference, I did meet or speak with someone from the Department of Labor, trying to get some clarification on job gains, job losses, what it means. They have a lot of data, and I sent an email out to everyone on the committee this morning, and there's a probability that it'll be either later this week or next week that I'll be meeting with the Department of Labor again to kind of get some clarity. But there is some information that's, I think, interesting, to say the least.
I thought it was phenomenal. I mean, and it's current, and I really appreciate that, to have those statistics, you know, from a 2019 perspective, but also to take a really hard look at the impact of our college and the different education levels and growth, and I appreciate seeing that.
Economic development is a very big picture. There's a lot of moving pieces, and that's what we're trying to get our hands on, as well as working with everybody that is also trying to do the same things.
That's great.
So I have to go over time, so I think I am over by 1 minute. But I want to also thank Mr. Dietrich. He and I spoke this week a little bit about what's going on with our tourism economy, and I'm sure we'll have some more discussions along those lines too. I don't know if, Frank, you had anything to address the board or the committee this morning? Okay, thanks. Motion to adjourn, if there's no other questions. Supervisor Dickinson, Supervisor McGowan. We are adjourned.